Miss Jack Pye.
Jack Pye. What can I say about Jack? Well, he trained at Bridgman Street and he was top of the bill wherever he went. He was the only person known to walk into Bellevue Ring 3 Saturdays on the run and never get into the ring. Was disqualified before he got to the ring. That was Jack Pye, Dirty Jack Pye. Very big, ugly, dirty looking bloke. Yeah, he frightened anybody to death.
He was a superstar before superstars were even thought of. Every stadium he went to, he packed it. The man they love to hate, the king of the ring, the king of the mat, Jack Pye. I used to pester him to be a wrestler. And finally, he let me be his second. Blackpool Tower Circus, every Monday night, filled to capacity. I used to comb his hair between rounds and look at the lights and the crowd and everybody screaming at him. And my ambition from then on was to be a professional wrestler and to appear at the Tower Circus, Blackpool. And he must have got so fed up with me that he thought, I'll cure him. And he wrote me a letter and said, there's a famous wrestling gym in Wigan called Billy Riley's. Find it and tell him I sent you. And I got a Ribble bus from Blackpool and got to the middle of Wigan and somehow found Scholes Gym. And I walked in a ramshackle old gym with corrugated roof and ugly people with cauliflower ears and broken noses. And I said, Jack Pye sent me. I said, well, go and strip off, lad. I'll never forget this. Go and strip off. So I stripped off. I had just trunks on and some pumps, plinsolls. Right, go and have a pull about, lad. So this big, strong lad started pulling me about. I didn't know what day it was. I ended up with a broken nose, bruised ribs, scratches, sore, aching all over. A little old Billy Riley sitting in an armchair watching. Right, go and get this cell showered. So I went to a little shower round the back. Picture it now. Cold water. I felt like crying. I was only a boy. And I could hear him talking. Yon mum wait me back. So I said, I heard what you said, but I'll be back next week. And Billy Riley said these words to me. He said, if there wants to be a wrestler, there's got to learn to stun pain. Will you be back? I said, I'll be back. And the next week I did go back. Didn't want to, but I had to. And they were entirely different. They could not do enough for me, treated me with respect because I'd returned. And they taught me the beginnings and the rudiments of the trade that was going to earn me a living for nearly the rest of my life.
I think it's nice to entertain people. You get a great kick out of it, but it's something you like. It's all about you liking a sport. That's where you do well at a sport, because you go out the way to learn more about it.
20 years later, Jack was retired, but fell on hard times financially. And I found myself in the ring at the Tower Circus, my ambition from being a boy, with the crowd, and my opponent was Jack Pye. And he said to me, Tony, he says, we're not going to hurt each other, are we? I said, Jack, I love you. He said, I'm king at mat.
Wrestling amateur and wrestling pro are all part of the same network, all part of the same concept. They've gone different paths, there's no doubt about it. But then when I also saw the great amateur wrestlers like Dan Hodge, who had gone into professional wrestling, I saw the great bridge there. In fact, we have a wall here in the museum called the Bridge. And I saw that the bridge that exists between the amateur world and the pro world, and here in America, they'd been at odds with each other for about 40 years.
Now, I'm a firm believer that it's become so big that they should look out and start looking out more for the sport of amateur wrestling.
The British Amateur Wrestling Association's headquarters are located down the road from Wigan and Bolton in Salford. Despite its historical pedigree, wrestling is now a marginal sport that in the UK struggles to compete against the popularity of other more high-profile pastimes. The association has brought in Nikolai Kurniev, a top coach from the Ukraine, where wrestling remains a national sport, in an attempt to boost Britain's chances at international level.
Before Nikolai came over, I mean, I've only actually been in wrestling about 6 years, but there was nothing like this at the academy. You went to your clubs. I mean, the clubs do a great job for you. The coaches at the clubs do an absolutely great job, but one of the things that was lacking was like international experience as a coach. We've had a lot of international wrestlers, but to actually have a top-class international coach come over who's been there, done it, and can tell us how to wrestle what we need to be doing at an international level.
Look, many good boy, many good junior. Understand? Only one problem: no work professional coach. Professional coach work only I am one. 50 million population English and one professional coach very little. Ukraine, same country, only 1,500 professional coach work.
This is our bright star, Brian Aspen.
Brian Aspen won the Commonwealth Gold in the 1982 Brisbane Games. Brian and his father Albert are two of the most successful amateur wrestlers Britain has ever produced.
They all came down together as a trio. Albert was the lightest of the three, and he was the one that took to it like a duck taking to water. And he hadn't been going long before he had a cauliflower ear.
It's a cheap sport. You only need a pair of swimming trunks and a pair of thrashers like, and I think that's why, you know, a lot did it, because there was no money in them days. But when you look at the facilities we had and the facilities we've got now, like, it's incredible. Like, and we haven't got the numbers now as what we had then.
To me, it's the ultimate sport. It's everything. You know, you've your mental strength, you've your physical strength, you need power, you know, you need fitness. It's everything, and you're just one-on-one when you go on that mat. Northwest, it's always done well. Commonwealth and Olympic. Every Olympic you're in Commonwealth, you nearly had your Olympic team. It would nearly always Northwest lads that, you know, come through.
But now, when you start looking back, you wonder whether you've done that. You know, it's a memory, like, and you just wonder whether you did it or not. Like, it's incredible.
At the Fighting Fit Combat Club in Atherton, a former mining town between Wigan and Bolton, Shane Rigby, who competed in the 1994 Commonwealth Games, and some of his friends teach real submission wrestling, a sport that has found a new audience with the advent of mixed martial arts competitions that pit different styles of fighting against each other, a sport epitomised by the global phenomenon of the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
There was a great history out at Bolton, and with the old people, Albert Aspin, telling us about the old time and stuff. John Rigby, who's still a member of the wrestling club, he's wrestled when he was in the Second World War. He'd wrestled all over Burma and Thailand and stuff when he was out there. I enjoyed it, and I do enjoy it. It's from the freestyle, which I was always doing, there is limitations. You cannot put face bars on, and you can't put any locks on or submission holds on. But whereas in the Lancashire wrestling, the catch as catch can, you're allowed to do that. It's slightly more brutal.
I can come in here though. Come for this. Yeah, once I've got that on, just lean with it. That's going on that. Okay, or here, whatever.
I feel that kind of the freestyle wrestling is a watered down version of catch as catch can.
They what they call, you'll submit them if someone puts a bar on, but that's what they did. They're very timid in amateur, you know. It's right, though. It's correct. Nobody gets really badly hurt, you see.
You ready?
Let's
get it on.
He's the crowd favorite. He's the crowd favorite. Oklahoma City kid.
Both in the black trunks. Mustache to sever. Muay Thai against wrestling.
There's the double. Doing a great job there, countering. Severn taking some shots just to get him up. Oh, he's taking a lot of shots.
But Severn continues to work. Takes an elbow to the head from Azir.
A lot of the same techniques that I use today are the same techniques from days gone by, and you know, realistically, a person has 2 arms, 2 legs, the neck. There's only so many different ways that you can turn, twist, or manipulate. A lot of the same techniques that were utilized at the turn of the century are the same techniques that they're utilizing now. They're just putting it together in different combinations.
I and anybody else who cares about the sport of wrestling is indebted to Dan Severn, because it takes tremendous courage to do what he and the UFC people do. To climb into a ring and hear that gate clang shut behind you in an octagon, and you're in a cage and there's you and the other guy and the referee with basically no rules other than biting and going to the groin. Don't ever sell those guys short. I don't care if you go out there and get demolished in the first minute. The courage it takes to climb into that ring is immense, and I have immense respect for anybody who would do that.
No weight classes, no time periods, bare-knuckled. And you couldn't get much more wrong format. So literally, you could do virtually anything out there. And to me, this was the ultimate test of skill and of mental and physical fortitude.
I think wrestling as a whole will definitely, or has definitely benefited from the UFC. People are watching that and saying, you know, there's more to this wrestling than meets the eye.
The road from Japan to Wigan is a long one, but it is one well travelled by Japanese wrestlers and fans. For the Japanese, Wigan, and Billy Riley's gym in particular, are the spiritual home of wrestling. Roy has been invited over many times to teach the traditional art of catch and has helped organise Lancashire tournaments. Japan's biggest wrestling organisation, New Japan, and its president, Tatsumi Fujinami, became fascinated with the Lancashire style as the origins of the professional sport began to be understood.
日本のレスリングというのは大体アメリカからずっと入ってきてるレスリングなんだけど、でも今一番こう見直されてるのがそういうテクニックというのか、そういうビリー・ライリージムのそういうテクニック、要するにカール・ウォッチであり、ビル・ロビンソンであり、ロイ・ウッドであり、それが今ここに来て見直されてきてるっていう状況ですね。
It was down to a guy called Carl Gotch. His real name was Carl Istas. He was a Greco-Roman wrestler. He came from Belgium. He was over here sort of at the time when places like Bellevue were doing good business, you know, the sort of wrestling matches.
One of the Wigan wrestlers said to him, if you're a straight wrestler and you're wrestling the Olympics, why don't you go down on Sunday morning to Riley's and wrestle at Riley's? So Carl Gotch, being the man he was, where he'd go anywhere, they were like gunslingers. They used to go all over looking for good wrestlers. Went down Riley's gym and he found himself not doing too good. So he stayed in Wigan for 2 years, and they said when he left he was very, very good.
He'd never seen anything like that, what went on there, the sort of, you know, basic shoot wrestling. Is the best way to describe it.
He fell in love with it so much he went to America and did well in America, and he told everybody in America, and people came over from America to learn our style of wrestling. He went to Japan and started wrestling in Japan and got a lot of the Wigan lads to go over wrestling in Japan. So the Wigan wrestlers and the Wigan style of wrestling is world famous.
Just after the Second World War, the professional wrestling industry evolved in Japan, and they started bringing American wrestlers over there. Carl Gotch was one of them, and his style to them just stuck out as being completely different to the style that the Americans were using. And that was how the Japanese got to find out about Billy Riley, because Carl Gotch basically, explained what had happened to him, how he'd learned. He did some coaching himself, and the Japanese really took to this style of wrestling and saw it as a very pure form of the sport.
もうカルゴッチがもう今教えられないっていう、だから教える人が今いないんですよね。5年ぐらい前かな、僕がこっちに来てロイウッドを知ってましたから、ロイウッドは日本に来てもらって、とにかく日本のファンに要するにプロレスとランカッシャーの違いっていうものをまず見てもらって、でとにかく今のそのレスリングを始める選手にも要するに基本をまずしっかりと。
They asked us would I teach them show them submissions, so they brought a wrestler over with them, they brought a manager over with them, they brought somebody from the media, so Billy Joyce and myself showed them a few submissions and they seemed very happy. They wanted to have a look at the old gym, so we showed it them on the floor in a big pile of rubble, and I thought they was going to start crying when they saw it. One of them tried to lift the roof back up.
Vast majority of martial arts do come from Japan, and I think just interested in, you know, martial arts, wrestling, grappling, just as a sport, basically.
日本は今とにかく空手から柔術からとにかく今いろんなそのファイトがこう入ってきてるけど、とにかく一個一個これから各格闘技が見直されてきてるっていうか、とにかくプロレスはプロレス、要するにそのランカッシャーはランカッシャーっていうか、そういうのがだから今ごっちゃまでなってるっていう、そういう分でのテクニックをしたい、要するにサミッションであり、それがだからビリヤードジムっていうのか、要するに日本のそのプロレスっていうのは殴ってもよし蹴ってもよしっていう部分が要するに勘違いをしてるね。
So you don't see very many matches end in submission holds. They kind of left that period of time, and then they went to that was early in the professional wrestling era. Then they went on to these pinfalls taking place. Then with the onslaught of the Ultimate Fighting Championships, submission holds became more of a popularity. You have Ken Shamrock out there doing his ankle submissions. You had Dan the Beast Severn going out there and doing basically a dragon sleeper, and tearing the chest apart of D'Lo Brown, and things of that nature. So they all actually have merit. A lot of the techniques that are utilized. I don't believe a lot of your modern day professional wrestlers, when they go into their professional wrestling schools, have any idea the lineage of the techniques that they are trying to learn and to utilize, but it all goes back to gyms such as this.
I would say it's always better to walk away from a fight, not a wrestling match, a fight, because you can get involved in fights that you don't mean to do, and the point is that you say, oh, it was such a body, and it come from wrestling club, so you're tired straight away because you're a wrestler, because they think that you're doing wrestling holds on them, which you're not really. And I've always found out that it's always better to walk away in a dispute or a fight, anything like that. I don't want nothing to do with them at all. Probably I could kill them, but you don't.
There is a certain hold, I don't know if any of the other boys have told you, that you can look after yourself with. It's called a grobbit. And I was told, if you're ever in trouble, and I went to Calgary in Canada at the Stampede grounds, and I was thrown in with a 6'8" giant called Ivan Krinkovich, who was an animal. I was 20 years old, I was in a foreign country, my first match, and I was getting the kicking of a lifetime. I'm a limey, and they were just going to do it, and the old hole came in, and from then on, they knew that I knew what I was doing, and I was respected all the way through Canada, the United States, treated with respect.
That is, it's a brutal move, and if it's done right, like I said, that could break your neck, quite easy. So, which nobody wants to do that, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's a very brutal move, that Wigan Grobbit, and he's done, quite a few people do it. It's a well-known move. It's Wigan's very own move.
They were good, because they're hard, terrible hard.
I just think they had such a hard way of life. I mean, if you think about what it was like to work in the pits, the actual work kept them very fit. You know, the physiques, they were very wiry and not so much muscly, but, you know, and they were sort of mental. I mean, it must have been a horrible job, and this was a release of the, you know, the pent-up anger, and when they realised they could actually make money from it, I think they just put everything into the wrestling, and I think that's reflected in the style.
We started here in the clinch, yeah? There's all sorts going on. Yeah, and I hang the arm over and I move to this leg here, make him defend that leg. See that? When he takes that leg back, straight through the gap, fully committed, one step.
I know lads who are fighting, they're only into the third and fourth fights and they're getting 3 and 4 grand for single fights. There's not many pro boxers who've had 3 or 4 fights, lightweights or light middleweights, who are getting that kind of money. They're not. It's only, you know, the high profile boxers who are making the money, but some of these lads are making it pair. And as I saw when I used to go on with the older fellas, I mean, there's a lot of other sports you can do, but for something so high impact, you're going on with this 70-odd-year-old blokes up there, and they're still in perfect health. They're wrestling strong, and that's what you want to aspire to, innit? Be like that at their age, not like get 40 and think, well, that's me done, I'm over ill. It's not a career move, and it's not just an hobby. It's a lifestyle, innit? It's got to be, innit? If it be dedicated to it.
People like Shane who take wrestling to a different level and incorporate with other fighting styles. I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, it's great, you know. If anything, it's good because the wrestling is like a feeder to those sports. So any sports like that is good for wrestling. I mean, you go down to that club and see some of those guys train. I mean, it's very hard training. It's tough. They come off the sweating, the bruise, the aching. So you've got to have respect for anyone who's doing that, who's going to work all day, having the tea and then rushing to a club to endure that kind of stuff. So I mean, any sportsman, you've got to have respect for them, really. So yeah, I'm all for it.
In an attempt to boost grassroots interest in the sport he loves, Roy Wood has established wrestling in a small number of local schools. Roy and his daughter Andrea have run wrestling classes at Withens High School in Bolton for the last 2 years. Since that time, the school has enjoyed considerable success, having already won the British Schools Championship, and the school has recognised the remarkable impact it has had on some of its pupils.
1, 2, 3!
It was mainly through my dad, because my dad runs Aspel Wrestling Club, and so I've always been around wrestling, but I've not always done it, I've just been around it. And we got a sponsorship awards for all, we got £5,000, and we set up in 4 schools, and my dad was finding it difficult doing them all, and so I just became interested in it and started trying to help him. My own opinion is it's the only way forward. The only way in wrestling is to get it into schools, show kids what it's about, make them realise it's not professional wrestling. That's what we've done here, and we've had a great success with it, and the children love it.
There's not a great deal of discipline that can be exerted on kids in school these days. It's fair to say we have a few rascals amongst our kids. There's quite a few rascals amongst the kids who wrestle. But they know the parameters they can't step beyond. They know they've got to behave, and they know they've got to conduct themselves in the correct manner when they're on the wrestling mat. And they do. It's self-confidence. It's funny, really, that a lot of the lads, the real top quality lads who are wrestling are very quiet lads, and quietly confident.
I know when I came to teach at this school, I was warned about the behaviour and about the attitude of the children, but to be honest, and it's only fair to say, they've been absolutely wonderful in wrestling. And the children that did cause a problem, we tend to get rid of within the first couple of weeks, because usually the loudmouths are the bullies, and then when they get beat in wrestling, they don't come back anyway, and it tends to show who are the real heroes.
The future of any sport and the future of anything in life, the future depends on the youth. It depends on the young guys coming through. And if you want to make a sport a great sport, if you want to continue with the successes, following the footsteps of the wrestlers that's done well, then you've got to invest in your youth.
But only in wrestling and in boxing and a few of the martial arts do you find that great respect that other people carry for them. And I've seen other athletes, great athletes, when Dan Gable walks into a room, it's like if Muhammad Ali walks into a room. And it was that way when Gotch walked into a room, or Joe Stecker. And if anybody knew was paying attention in England and knew who Billy Riley was, it had to be that way when he walked into a room. There is an exceptional human being right there. I think wrestling will always have a place because of its great history and because of its great value as a martial art, but the ball sports have taken over the world society, and most athletes are going to continue to gravitate towards sports where they kick or throw a ball.
You've talked to me about England and about wrestling at the turn of the century, and it's kind of disappeared a lot. Well, we don't want that in America. I mean, there's been enough of us that we have to band together, but we want to make sure wrestling's around at the end of the next century. You know, we're a bunch of fighters, and we believe in this sport because we believe that there's a certain group of people out there that enjoy it, but more than that, there's a certain group of people that it will make their lives better. And so we're stepping up, but that doesn't mean it's automatic. And a lot of people get frustrated. I may get frustrated, but I won't give up on it.
I was always told, why are you on your feet? You're a world beater. It's only when they get you down to the floor in amateur, catch as catch can.
I think people from Wigan and around the northwest have a lot of determination. People call it grit, don't they? True grit, and I think that helps people succeed in sports like wrestling, where you do need to have a lot of bottle, and you're doing everything for yourself.
I never thought I'd done much at all if I won, you know. I only knew I used to just go in, but by keep doing it, it just comes a natural thing. You don't think, am I going to win? Never entered my head. I do have confidence of doing my job. Giving a thing and wanting him to take it, having the counter. Right, this is what we're all about. Just go in and enjoy it. It was like the war. Never thought you'd get killed. It never entered your head.
Catch can is Lancashire. I don't know how to say it in English. So very important is professional wrestler, how to keep.
My life has been one thing, and that's been wrestling. I think when you get older and you've had a good sport and you can further this sport, which I've done, it's a reward. And although I've never been ill in my life, I've been hurt really badly, I've had some bad injuries. And I think the greatest thing I've achieved out of this is teaching youngsters, keeping youngsters off the street, and my reward in my life has been to all these young lads who are now fathers, some of them are grandfathers, I've had the grandchildren, and they pass me in the street and they say, "Hiya John, are you keeping all right? Are you still going to that club?" And I think, yes, and it is. I think that's what's kept me going. Like, I'm turned 80 now, and I was wrestling on Friday night on this mat behind us here. And I thank the Lord for looking after me.
There's an old chap who lives down our street in a cosy cottage greenhouse, and every Sunday morning when it's fine, well, I often goes and sits with him to have a smoke and chat, because he is a dear old friend of mine. And when it's getting dinner time, dinner's ready then, I think it must be time for me to go. But he goes and hangs me at up right behind the out front door, and then to my surprise I hear him say, "Hey, I'm always glad to see a man like thee. Let us welcome, lad, as welcome as can be. watch the cheer, right up to table stoppers long as